Today we're painting with contrast. This is a lot of fun. It's easy to do. I think you're going to find it very interesting. You're going to use this a lot. It's TK Friday, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. We are painting with contrast today. It's TK Friday. This is an action inside of the TK7 combo or CX panel, whichever panel you choose to use. This is going to be a lot of fun, and it's also so easy to do. Hey, by the way, if you're interested in any of Tony Kuiper's products, I have an affiliate link listed in the description below, which will take you to Tony's page where you can pick up the TK7 panels, and there's videos on there. And when you use my promo code DK15, you save an extra 15% off anything you buy, which gives you a nice savings, and it helps out my channel and helps me to keep these videos coming your way. And I want to thank everyone who has used this link in the past or is going to use it in the future. Thank you so much. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, and that way you'll be notified when I send out new videos. And this really helps support my channel as well. It helps my channel to be seen by other people, and I really, really appreciate that. And also, leave those comments and questions. I love it when you guys give me feedback. Thank you. Well, enough of that. Let's get right down to it. You're going to love this. I mean, this is something that is really fun to do, and it's super easy to do. All you need to do is come to the TK actions on the TK7 combo or CX panel, open up your actions, and you're going to find this action called Paint Contrast. I'm going to show you how cool it is first, and then we're going to break down really what's happening when you use this action. So let's go ahead and click Paint Contrast. And a color picker comes up. It's on neutral gray right now, 50% gray. Just click OK to start out with. And you'll notice you have a blank pixel there that is set to a hard mix blend mode, and you have a fill of 15% and an opacity of 100%. This fill is important for adjustments, but we'll get into that later. But first off, we're going to do a little bit of experimenting. Now, take particular note to these brushes right up here in my combo panel. This is a black brush. This will give you a black paint. This is a white brush, which will give you white paint. And this is a gray brush, which will give you 50% gray paint. We're going to use all those different brushes today. 3 simple brushes: black, white, and neutral gray. Right now, the paint contrast layer is selected, a blank pixel layer. Again, hard mix blend mode, 15% fill. I'm going to start out with a gray brush, okay? And what I'm going to do is just paint on these clouds back here in the horizon, okay? I'm going to try to mainly stay on the clouds. Now, the cool thing about this technique is we don't have to use luminosity masks. We can just be free and loose and just be like artists and paint. So watch. I'm going to paint with 100% paint right across these mountains. These are not mountains, Dave. These are clouds. And check this out. I'm going to even come up into this cloud a little bit. And I have a nice soft edge brush on here, so I have some nice feathering action. But check that out. Look at this. Here is the before, and here is the after. That's the gray brush, okay? And the gray brush is basically, it affects light and dark tones. So any light or dark tones, they're going to become more contrasty. Darker tones will get darker, lighter tones will get lighter, hence adding contrast. How cool is that? But again, here's the before and here's the after. Now look at this snow over here. It's kind of darkened down a little bit, but what if we want to lighten it up? Well, let's try a white brush. So let's use our handy brush selector here on the TK7 combo panel. Let's click on the white brush. Now I'm going to paint with 100% opacity. I'm just going to paint right on here. And check that out. Look how that snow just starts to lighten up. Again, I'm painting with a white brush. Last time I was painting with a 50% gray brush, but whenever you want to bring really, highlighted tones out, the white brush is the one that you want to use. But let me go ahead and paint all down through here, even on these light areas of the rocks here. Okay, so I'm painting in with white. Now let's check this out. Here is the before and here's the after. And by the way, I didn't do it here, but probably what I should have done was gave myself a new layer for each one of the different brushes. I think it makes more sense in case you want to adjust the individual contrast ranges differently. Because don't forget, you're going to be working with dark contrasts, light contrasts, and the 50% gray is going to give you the combination of both light and dark. So I generally recommend that you use separate layers. So for the black brush, let's make a separate layer. And then next time I won't make that mistake. But it's good to leave mistakes in because we learn from our mistakes. At least sometimes I do. But let's go ahead and add another paint contrast layer. And this time, I'm just going to click OK again. This time I'll select a black brush. All right, and I'll leave it on 100%. And I will paint right on this over here. Okay? And again, 100%, but check that out. All the darker tones will be getting darker. I'm going to come out in here, but it's disregarding the lighter tones, which is really cool. And that's the reason you don't really need a luminosity mask here, because this hard mix blend mode is kind of doing all the work for you. So check that out. And let me even paint down here, the darker tones in here. See, when I go over the light areas of the snow, it's not affecting that at all, which is really nice. Even when I go over the little bit of snow right in there, it's not being affected. So check that out. Now here is the before and here's the after. Now here's another nice reason why it's good to use separate layers for the different white, black, and neutral gray, because you have this fill slider. So if you feel that adjustment's a little too strong, because remember, every one of these layers I painted with 100%, and a lot of times you can get away with 100% opacity on your brush. Other times you're going to want to adjust it down if the effect's too strong. But you have two different ways of making adjustment. One is with the opacity on the brush, and the other is with this fill opacity here. So if I felt that was too strong, just watch that rock. I'll pull it back just a little bit. You see that? And I can... Let's take it back to right around 10%. Now here is the before and here's the after. But isn't that cool? Now I'm noticing this snow up here. This looks a little bit gray. Kind of, not so nice. I want to lighten that up. So let me this time not make the same mistake by not adding another layer. So let's come to the TK action, grab another paint contrast, click OK. And this time I'm going to grab a white brush and I'm going to paint on here, but I think I'm going to paint at about 50% opacity on my brush. I'm going to make my brush just a little bit smaller and I'm going to paint over top of this. And check that out. There's 50% right across there. Lightens up the lights and it's only affecting the lights. Now I can give it another 50%. And that puts another 50% on top of that. Okay, so let's take a look. Here is the before, and here's the after. And if I felt I was too strong there, again, I can take this fill and just ease it back. Let's ease it back to like 10% before and after. Maybe even a little less. Maybe, let's try 8%. Here's before and here's after, but just lightens that up a little bit. But that is basically how easy it is to do this. Now, do you have to use black, white, and neutral gray? No. Sometimes you can just get away with neutral gray. Sometimes you just need to bring contrast up in dark tones. You would use black. If you just need to bring contrast up in light tones, just use light. And sometimes you're going to use a combination of all three. Next up, let's see how this all works on a gradient. So I have this gradient here so we can kind of take an observation of what's actually happening here. So let me go ahead and grab a paint contrast action. I'm just going to click OK. So you see I have this nice gradient from darks up into lights. So now we can see how these different brushes, black, white, and neutral gray, interact with a gradient because it helps to make sense of things when we do that. So with my, let's get a brush. So I'm going to make it a rather large brush here. Let me start out with white paint. We'll start at the top and paint a white swatch across here. I'm going to make sure my opacity is at 100%. I'm just typing 0. That's a shortcut. And I'm just going to click here one time, hold the shift key down and click across here. And that draws a straight line right across there. All right. And notice something here. We're getting a lot of light effect in here, mainly at the light. So this is pure white over here. And then you notice we get really light tones here, and that tapers off as we get into the dark tones. All right, so that's light. So we can see what's happening there. Now remember, we're using a hard mix blend mode with a fill of 15%. Now we can go ahead and turn this fill up a little bit so you can maybe see more of what's going on here. Let's over exaggerate it to 32%. Here's white here, but you can see it's affecting all these light tones and it tapers into the darks. Now with the brush tool, let's do another one. This time let's get a neutral gray. So let's click on this gray brush right here. And I'm going to go right here in the middle. I'm going to click one time, hold the shift key down and drag it across. Okay, and now notice here that it's affecting the lights and darks. Here's the dark tones in here, and here's the light tones in here. And this section right in here, which is neutral gray, it's not affecting at all. So it's affecting dark tones and it's affecting light tones. All right, so now let's get another brush, and this time let's go with the black brush. And again, I'm going to click one time, click, shift, hold the shift key down and click across. Now I'm painting with black paint, hopefully. Yes, I'm painting with black paint. And now notice here, so the dark tones are getting affected. So more contrast is going into the dark tones and it tapers off as we get into the light tones. So there you go. That's exactly what's happening. But notice this neutral gray again right here. It doesn't affect the neutral gray tones because it is a neutral gray. But the light tones are affecting all the light areas and they taper into the dark. And the dark or the black brush is affecting all the dark areas and it tapers off into the light. So that's what's happening there. Next, let's move on to another example. I have two more examples and we'll be done. I just want to cement this idea and bring it home and show you how easy it is to do and how fun it is to do and how creative and beautiful the results can be. Isn't this a cool little shot? Hey, by the way, you can download these images. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. These are stock images. You can download them, and some of you like to follow along, and that's a great way of learning. Let me go ahead and set this up. I'm going to go ahead to the TK Actions, and I'm going to add 3 layers, of paint contrast. Paint contrast. Click OK. Let's do another one and paint contrast. I'm going to click OK because I'm going to use white, black, and gray. And one last time, paint contrast, click OK. And you could also label these layers if you want to, like white, black, and neutral gray. Sometimes that helps. It keeps some of the confusion down, but I'm not going to do that now for lack of time. So let's go on this first one right here. And let us start out with a gray brush. So let's just grab a gray brush here. I'm going to keep my opacity at 100%. I'm going to stay away from this lighter area over here. And I apologize if you can't see the brush on my software. I'm trying to show it the best I can, but sometimes it doesn't show up as well, and there's nothing I can do about it. So if I can find another piece of software that'll work better, I will do that. But right now, I'm just going to go ahead and paint over this and paint over this area in here. Let's go all in here. Now remember, this is the neutral gray, and we can see what it's doing here. So we'll paint over it. And if I paint in the dark areas, it'll affect some of the darker tones in here as well. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go right here. And I'm going to save this branch for for black. I think that'll look really good. Let's just see what happens though if I paint over here. Okay. It does add some contrast pop in there, but it's not that big of a deal for me. I don't like it that much, but let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. So the before and the after. And if I was too strong, I could pull this back a little bit if I wanted to, or if I wanted a little more, I could go maybe up a little bit. That's too much. I don't want to go too dark in here. That's 10%. I think I'm just going to leave this at 15%. So here's the before and here's the after. Now let's go ahead and go on this layer and let's paint with black. Let's get a black brush and I'm going to paint across here at a full 100% opacity, and the darker tones will get really darker. Much more contrast on those darker tones, and I can make my brush even smaller and paint here. Be careful here because dark tones outside of this branch will get affected. So you got to be a little on the careful side here because we are painting without a luminosity mask here. But again, it really protects you really well because you're using that hard mix. But on an area out here where there's dark, it will get dark and it'll look a little funky if you don't want that, if you only want it on the branch. So be careful. So that looks good. So let's see, here's a before and here's a after. Now let me do something here. I might be able to get some nice contrast out of this area right here, but I don't want to paint that at a full 100% opacity. I'm going to take that opacity down to about 20% and make my brush a little larger and just paint on here. Here's 20%. Now I can build this up. There's 20% and that looks cool. Let me give it another 20%. Okay, and even in here, I'm going to go and get 20% up in here. I think that looks really nice. So yeah, so check that out. So here's the before and here's the after. Isn't that cool? Now let's try white paint on here. Let's grab this white brush. Now don't forget to take advantage of these icons here for your brush. It's really nice. Now with white, I just want to paint some of these lighter areas on the feathers here. And I think 20% is good. I don't want to overdo this. So let me paint here, 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 here. Let's maybe paint down here. I'm hitting it a couple times. Every time I paint, it's giving it another 20%. So I'm just building that up slowly. So take advantage of using the opacity on the brush. And also you have this other adjustment here in the fill, which is nice. So let's take a look. Here's the before and here's the after. And that looks, I think that looks really good. And I'm happy with that. Now let's go ahead and do an option, or I'll click on the background layer. So here's the before and here's the after. So again, the before and the after. But that was quick. That was easy. And that's how simple it is to paint contrast on your images. Let's try one more image and we will be done. This guy right here, what is he? He is an iguana maybe? Not sure, but let's paint some contrast on him. Let me go ahead and I'm going to get a paint contrast. And this time I think I'm going to start out with a black brush. Let me see what I need. I might just use a black and a light brush. Now I'm at 20%. I'm going to go up to 40% and give it a test here. Oh yeah, look at that. That is fantastic. I love it. Look at that right in there. That's now what again, what was that? I'm talking to myself. That was 40%, Dave. And now we're going to paint a little bit more in here. And let's paint some of that down here. Paint over here maybe. Oh, that was too much. I'm just going to do a Command Z. Or if you make a mistake, you also have this button on the TK panel here so you can go back a stroke here. Let me go down to like 10% and maybe come under. Yeah, 10% I think is better. So take advantage of your opacity to just build stuff up slowly. Nobody says you have to go full bore on this stuff right there. And let's take a look. Here's the before and here's after. Isn't that cool? Now let me add one more here, and this time it will be paint contrast again, but this time I'm going to go with a white brush. So I'm going to click this icon here, and that's 10%. Let me go to 20% and just paint, yeah, right in here. Stroke this a few times in here, bring up some of these lights, and maybe on here. Maybe in here, maybe right there, a little bit. Okay, check that out. Now here's the before, and here's the after. Now if we wanted more, we could take this fill and just bring it up a little bit. You see that, how we can bring more out? You don't want to go too crazy. You're probably going to be around, stay under 30, I think, because if you go too high, you can make it look really horrible, right? So be careful with that. So I would say stay under 30, but let's bring it up to maybe around 24. So here's the before and here's the after. Now let's go on the black brush layer. I'm going to grab another black brush here, and I just want to paint at 10%. I just want to get a little bit more down in here. Just right down in there like so. Now let's give it a little bit more fill and see what happens. Here's a little extra fill. That's 24. That's way too much. I'm thinking maybe about 18. Here's the before and here's the after. Now, if you want to, you can put these two layers in a group. I'm just going to hold the shift key down and click on this top paint contrast layer. Now they're both selected. Now I can come and grab this icon on the TK combo panel and put that in a white group. So here's the contrast adjustment before and after. And then we can take the main opacity and we can pull it back if we felt we were a little too strong. And that'll control both of the layers inside of there. So here's the before and here's the after. But that is it. Hold the presses. No, it's not. I forgot to show you because I know somebody out there is saying, well, can we paint color contrast on our images, Dave? And yes, you can. Let me just show you here. Let me go ahead and add another paint contrast layer above this one. And let's just get some red paint. And I'm going to get a red tone, a highlight of red right around here. Click OK. And let me go ahead and paint at 100% on here. I don't really like to paint with color contrast, and I'll show you why. Because when I do, of course, I'm coloring red onto the snow, which I don't want. But you notice also it is coloring red onto these rocks. It's very unpredictable what it's going to do, so I generally don't like to do it. But if you wanted to make these rocks red, you know, like for instance down in here, and let's pull my opacity down to about, you know, like 20%. Like you could come in here and add some red in here. So yeah, you can paint colored contrast on, but it's very unpredictable, so you got to be careful with it. But I just wanted to show you that yes, you can do that if you want. I myself don't really practice that. I just use the black, white, and the neutral gray. Well, there it is. Now you know how to paint with contrast. I bet you didn't think it was that easy to do. Well, it's simple, right? Give it a try. Let me know in the comments section what you think. I'd really like to hear from you. Hey, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're not yet a subscriber, click that bell notification icon. And then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me this day on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, as always, happy editing.